Right off the bat, I want to go ahead and thank everyone for the overwhelming support. To pass 100 followers so quickly has been nothing but amazing. Thank you again, and I hope you enjoyed this video. So far on this channel, we've gone over everything you need to collect for a basic living dex. We've also gone over everything you need to collect in Scarlet and Violet. If you can believe it, we actually have a couple brand new expansions to add onto our living dex though. Let's dive into the many forms that can be collected. Generation 2 did a lot of good when it came to adding variation to the series. We were introduced to the Pokemon Unknown, who had, at the time, 26 different forms. This kicked off a trend that hasn't stopped since, and frankly is one of my favorites. Simple form changes are great for collecting as well as standing out. There have been a number of forms that have been introduced. Everything from genders, seasons, regions, haircuts, and sizes, plus many more have been created. In this video, we will go over all of the forms that you can collect and transfer to Pokemon Home. Before we get into things, in my previous Living Dex video I mentioned that you should resist using remakes to build out your respective decks. Hearing your comments, I thought it would be appropriate to use remakes for this challenge. This not only adds some diversity, but also allows remakes to be used in the future to serve a greater purpose. However, once you get to Generation 5 and onward, I would recommend that you catch these Pokemon in the games that they debuted in. Let's start things off by creating a new section right after the last numbered Pokemon to include gender forms. Gender forms are just what you'd expect. Effective edits that give both male and female Pokemon differences in the form of pattern, size, and eventually looks and stats. Here are the gender differences that you should collect. Next up, we'll have to make an alternate form section. This will call back to the origin of form changes to begin with. I like to order these based on the Pokedex number. For this, you'll need all the Pikachu forms. Since we can't transfer cosplay Pikachu, this will just need to include a basic Pikachu and all of the cat forms. Following Pikachu, we'll need to include all of the unknown. Remember to catch these in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, with the exception of the exclamation point and question mark, since they were technically introduced in Fire Red and Leaf Green. For Generation 3, we'll need to catch all 4 forms of Deoxys. This can be done in Omega Ruby or Alpha Sapphire once per save file. Generation 4 includes the 3 forms of Burmy and Wormadam, the 2 forms of Shellos and Gastrodon, and all the different Rotom forms. Note that these will require breeding in order to collect. Lastly, you'll need the 2 forms of Shaman. If you missed the event in Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, you can still catch Shaman once per save file in Legends Arceus. In Generation 5, you'll need both striped forms of Basculin, all 4 seasons of Deerling and Sawsbuck, the Incarnate and Therian forms of the Gen 5 Weather Trio, and lastly Keldeo's 2 battle forms. These will either be event or obtained via Sword and Shield since Keldeo is a mythical. I'm going to apologize in advance for Generation 6. This is just a tough one. I'm going to ask for both forms of Greninja, with its Battle Bond form only being available in the Sun and Moon Special Demo version. All of the forms of Vivillon can be hunted via trading as well as postcards, with both Scarlet and Violet and Pokemon Go, with the exception of its Pokeball form. We're also going to need Flabebe, Floette, and Florges. Note that the Eternal Floette form is not available legitimately, so it won't be required. Furfrou will need to be caught via Pokemon Go in order to transfer to home, otherwise it will revert back to its base form. That's not the case for Pumpkaboo and Gourgeist though. All 4 size variants are available in X and Y. Only Zygarde's 10% form and 50% form can be transferred in. His 10% form will need to be caught in Generation 7, but his 50% form can be caught in Generation 6. Lastly, we have Hoopa. His confined form is available via events and Pokemon Go. His unbound form will require a transformation item that is readily available in Generation 7 and 8. Generation 7 continues with all 4 forms of Oricorio, the 3 forms of Lycanroc, but note that the Dusk form in Generation 7 was event-based. If you didn't receive that Rockruff then, it's possible to get it in Scarlet and Violet now. There are 7 colors of Minior that as of right now can only be obtained in Generation 7. Lastly, we have Magearna, who has 2 forms, one of which you'll need to complete a basic living dex in Pokemon Home to obtain. The other requires a QR code in either of the Sun and Moon series games. For Generation 8, you're going to have the 2 forms of Toxtricity, the Amped and Low-Key forms, both Phony and Antique Sinistea and Poltegeist, and all 63 Alcremie forms. Note, for the event-based suites, they can be created via the Cramomatic in the Sword and Shield DLC. You're also going to need to get both Urshifu forms. Zarude is next. At the moment, both of Zarude's forms are locked behind events, so I would look to trading to get this one. Lastly, we have both forms of Enamorus. Only one Enamorus is possible to get per save file in Legends Arceus. Generation 9 also has a number of forms that need to be collected. In an effort not to make this video any longer than it needs to be, I would see my last video I made, everything you need to catch in Scarlet and Violet for these. We're almost done, but we have the regional forms up next. Originally introduced in Generation 7, this consists of the Alolan forms, Galarian forms, Hisuian forms, and newly, the Paldean forms. When it comes to the special forms exclusive to each game that we'll need to collect, we'll have the Gigantamax forms of Generation 8 and the Convergent Species and Paradox forms of Generation 9. There are many other forms that unfortunately either can't be transferred into home at the time or require a held item to be viewed. Until they become able to transfer or hold an item via home, it isn't necessary to collect these. The comment section in these videos have been super helpful as of lately. Feel free to comment your favorite form or anything you think I missed. Thanks again for all the support and happy catching.